live whenever you
Okay.
are.
Clicked. Go ahead. Hey. Hi, David.
Hey, Michael, are you with us?
I am. And we are with each other. Are you watching the right feed?
Well, I am. This time I am, yes. Amazingly enough. Hey, everybody, I'm David from OutsiderBubble.com.
And I'm Michael from turtleherding.com. And I have extra audio coming
And
in.
just so you know, we are doing this broadcast across the continent for more or less. I am in Burleson, Texas. Michael is in Las Vegas, Nevada. And
Las Vegas.
Michael is doing the production today with the streaming coming directly from Michael and his little production studio he's got set up over there in his motor coach for us.
Yep.
But today's topic of choice, because last week we had a lot of people actually really like the talk that we did, the tech talk on lithium batteries. We had people ask us, hey, what do you think about solar? And so we decided, hey, let's do a talk on solar. Um,
Absolutely.
and I seem to be frozen for some reason, Michael.
Oh, interesting. Let me
Yeah,
see if I can tweak that.
there we
I've
go.
got too many windows going. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
there, you're
It's
back.
okay. It's all good. It's all good. So, anyways, yeah. So we decided to do a chat on solar, and Michael has done extensive, not only research but then extensive install on his motor coach
Yes.
for solar production of power. And so Michael will be taking most of the lead questions on all of this. But we're going to start off very simply with the question comes up as, do you really need solar? That's the first and foremost question. And that, I believe, Michael, would come down to how you use your motor coach.
Yes, very much so. How you use the motor coach, what your parasitic loads are on the coach, um, what what you're really expecting to get out of it, and is that realistic? So we're going to try to cover all those things. Um, right now, I'm hunting, I'm hunting down a phantom extra audio stream that I'm getting, and trying to figure out where it's coming from so I can mute it.
Uh, so, in any case, we had one question already come. I asked earlier for people to ask questions ahead of time if they had any,
Hmm.
and we did have a question come in regards to, do you when you screw down your solar panels, did you make sure, do you have to make sure you hit the roof, basically the ribbing of the roof, to get a good
Right.
secure fit? And that's a very good question because a lot of people are concerned that they're not going to get a good lockdown if they just hit the fiberglass. Now,
Yeah,
if I am not mistaken, you actually used high intensity strength tape and didn't screw anything down. Is that correct?
that is correct. Yeah, I didn't screw any of the panels down. I used what's called 3M very high bond, or VHB tape, and yeah, we've driven down the highway at 80 ish. I won't say exactly miles an hour,
Yeah.
and our solar
So,
panels are still there. But
and if you bring up a picture again of the before and the after, that's the cover shot that you saw earlier before the show started. That
yes,
is actually Michael's coach. So on the top is Michael's before, which one solar panel came with the motor coach, and what he did afterwards, and all the rest of that. Everything on the photograph on the bottom is what Michael added, and it is all put down by the high strength 3M tape, and no screws were involved whatsoever.
yeah, exactly. It's now. So keep in mind, there's a couple of things that work in my advantage on this. One is the first off, the roof is fiberglass, not EPDM. So David's peeking out from behind my picture here. uh, yeah, EPDM. So it's not the rubber membrane, right? If you have the rubber membrane, you cannot just adhere to that and make it work. You have to be you have to have something else.
So
So
yeah, so you want to be real careful then, because the rubber membrane won't adhere very very well. And
Yeah.
obviously, even if it did, it's a rubber membrane. It's not tacked down to anything per
Right.
se. Unlike the fiberglass, which is more of a solid surface, even if you were to screw into the fiberglass, you'll still be able to get a bond there with a screw. With the fiberglass, even though it's only like 1/8 inch or just over an eighth inch thick,
Yeah.
um,
It's a
you'll still
Luan
be able
type
to,
material, if I remember right.
yeah, right underneath, right under the fiberglass is Luan. And so you'll be able to bond to something. You'll be able to screw into something there. But I like Micah's approach. I really do. I liked his
Well,
approach of using the high
yeah.
strength tape. Except
Uh,
that if you ever have to get it off,
right. Well, actually, so it does come off pretty easily. You have to saturate the area with alcohol. So just isopropyl alcohol, spray it around it, and start wiggling it, or maybe put a like a putty knife or something under it, and then
okay,
the alcohol keeps it from re-sticking. So as it lifts up, it will, yeah, it won't re-stick. So you can eventually work it loose. And the fiberglass roof is extremely forgiving, which is why it's okay to do this, because you can use a scraper, you can use a razor blade if you're careful, you can use mineral spirits to clean it up. It'll take adhesive residue right off. That's how I
heck,
actually got off the Dicor, because let me
you
switch.
could use one of those reciprocating saw. The
Yeah.
vibrating Dremels.
Yep. So let me transition back over here. So in this shot,
Okay.
you can see there was right here. I think you can see my mouse.
Yep.
There's one of those in motion satellites, which frankly is useless.
Yeah.
So I wanted to use that space for solar, so I had to take that up and get up all of that Dicor sealant, and again, just like a putty knife, and then a straight edge razor, and then mineral spirits, and it came right up.
And that gave you space for
Yeah,
that you
space
needed.
for a lot of panels.
Right. And so the question becomes, you know, after having done all that, doing the solar and everything, it all comes down to usability. And if you really will get the expense that you put into it out of it, it all depends on how you use your motor coach. Or if you're doing a lot of
Yes.
dry camping or whatever, for the most part, I Brenda and I don't dry camp.
Right.
We only the only time we would dry camp is when we're going from one point A to point B, and then we park overnight somewhere like at a Walmart or something like that. And by that time, the sun's already going down, so the solar panels aren't going to help us anyways. Um, or if we're at Uberfest in Quartzsite, that's the only other time we would dry camp and be relying on solar. So for us, because of how we live and use our motor coach, solar expense to us is not worth it whatsoever.
Right. And so, yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can use solar. One, as David, you were just talking about dry camping, or for us, like when we're transitioning between sites, moving like from here in Las Vegas to Kentucky, which is where we're going after our next stop. You heard it here first, going to Kentucky. Um, so, and
or in the case also where you are, where you currently are, you pay for electric, so you could
yes,
actually supplement by
that's the
reducing your
secondary.
electrical cost. Oh,
Yep.
that's okay.
I see. I
I
was
stepped
getting in
ahead.
there.
I
That's
stepped
okay.
ahead. I'm
You transitioned into me here. That's okay. So, the benefit of this installation for us, from my perspective, I installed Magnum hybrid inverters, and what that allows me to do is I can supplement shore power with power from the batteries to supply large loads in the coach. So I can actually tell the Magnum inverters only pull, say, 15 amps or 20 amps from shore power, and anything over that that needs to be used comes out of the batteries and gets supplemented through the inverter. And so I looked at it as a means of doing shore power offset, just like David
Ah,
mentioned. So that way I'm reducing the amount of power I'm bringing in from shore, and I'm not paying for that. The other benefit for us, and this is something, David, that I may talk you into. Probably not, though. It's a little expensive. Anyway, the other benefit for
okay.
us is because I can limit the shore power usage, I can give more power to our electric vehicle so that the electric vehicle can charge more rapidly. For those that don't know, David and I both have Tesla Model X vehicles. David liked mine so much he went out and bought one.
I did.
And I created a project called EV, the number 4 RV, and there is a website for it, ev4rv.org. I make no money off of it. I released it open source to the world. There is some cost to it because you have to buy specific components to make it happen. But it monitors the actual power that the coach is using and dynamically adjusts the power that the car is using for charging so that I can charge the car and run the coach off the same 50 amp breaker.
Now
And
understand that I'm going to interrupt you here. I have
mhm,
to understand that Michael, of course, because a Tesla Model X or any EV for that vehicle, for that matter, cannot be flat towed. We have to tow
correct.
on a trailer. So
Yep.
Michael has a 24-foot trailer that he puts his Model X in when he moves.
Yes.
So what did Michael end up doing? Michael, will you show them what you ended up doing,
Sure.
or should I say we ended up doing at one point or another?
Yeah.
So here I am, lifted a panel up to Michael on his 24-foot trailer. That's the size of the panel. Michael's hidden behind that panel. I didn't just toss it up there. Michael's behind that, holding that in the air.
Yes.
And that's how big that panel is. And this is what he did to the top of his 24-foot trailer.
Yeah. So,
So, yeah, go ahead to go show him the top of your trailer, Michael.
yeah, yeah, getting there, getting there.
Okay. So yeah, not only is his motor coach fully outfitted with solar, but so is his tow trailer, to the point that it also has Tesla batteries inside that are fully charged, and he can connect the trailer together with the motor coach and
Yep.
run the whole thing as one giant, if they're parked together,
Yes.
one giant cluster, if you will, of solar and battery power.
Yeah. So we have some questions actually coming in on YouTube. So let
Great.
me address those here real quick. So the first question from Kevin Latour: what happens if I need to remove and replace any panels? So on that front, let me find a good picture of this. Uh, my installation, while they're adhered, the mount is adhered to the roof. The mount itself actually just has a wing screw that goes into the side of the solar panel. So technically, if I were to replace it with the exact same solar panel, and here's a good picture of that. Let me switch over here. So here, this is, I was positioning all the panels and wiring everything before I flipped them and actually stuck them to the roof. But you can see this, let's see, yeah, you can see this thumb nut or wing nut here. So that's actually bolted through into a bracket that is installed on the aluminum edging of the solar panel. So if it were like for like, I could just unscrew that, pop the solar panel off, move my bracket from the old panel to the new panel, and then I'd be good to go. The other thing, if it's more extreme and I need to, let's say I'm changing the actual dimensions of my solar panels and re-kitting everything out for some crazy reason, then if, like we mentioned earlier, you can use alcohol to work up that VHB tape and break that loose, and then I could, reposition and move things around as I needed. So that's that one. Let's see here. Are they flexible panels from Jones RV Adventures? No, they are not. Um, so they are solid panels, and they do have
As
an
as
aluminum.
apparent by Michael holding one up.
Well, so that's on the car hauler, right? So maybe we're
Yeah, yeah.
talking different on the roof. The other thing too is I wanted these feet on the panels to lift them up so that the shadows cast by the edge rail here of the coach and any other roof protrusions, like let's say an air conditioner. So with these feet on them, elevating them up, it keeps less shadows off. Keeps more shadows off of the solar
Right.
panels.
Because let's just to give you insight on that, what Mike was referring to is solar panels are only efficient as far as the actual receptors go,
Hmm.
and those are in parallel or parallel
Well,
or
so
serial.
that's a whole
Eh,
different topic. Yeah, you can do it
yeah,
either
yeah,
way.
but yeah, and depending on how the panel is set up, if you cast a shadow down one side of one row, for example, of the solar cells, you can actually really kill that panel sufficiency
Yes.
just because of a shadow. And it all depends on how the panel's made, obviously,
Yeah. So there's a
because there
couple
are
of
different types of panels.
there's a couple of contributors. So what David's talking about is if you look at these. Let me bring this back up here. If you look at these, you'll see that there's little squares, and then there's check marks in between them, right? So each of these squares is actually what's called a solar cell. And depending on how the panel is constructed, these cells may be like, for example, and I'm pretty sure this is accurate, but I wouldn't swear to it. For this panel, as an example, this long line here are all in parallel. And then these four strings are put in series. So if you cover just one cell in the series group that goes across, then you could kill the entire production of the panel because that cell becomes a blocker. It basically becomes an open circuit so that no power can flow through it. So what manufacturers do is to combat this, they actually put a box on the back of the solar panels, and that looks like this. And inside that box are diodes that go between each of the sets of panel or each of the sets of cells, and that diode allows the power to bypass that cell that's shorted out or that's open. So instead of losing 100% production of the panel, you may only lose, say, 25% of the production if one set is blocked. As you block more, you lose more and more production capability on that panel. So that's one of the things David's talking about, and that's actually the other. When you're designing something like this, you have to make a decision on whether you're going to put all of them in parallel, put all of them in series, or do a combination of the two. And this diagram actually shows what I did on mine. So I did 3 sets of 6 panels in series, and then I put each of those series sets in parallel to feed down to my solar controller. One of the reasons was to help production if there's a partial shade on the roof. The other reason was to limit my power loss on this line here that goes between the rooftop fuses and the breaker that's by the Magnum. So the lower your voltage and higher your current, this is way deep stuff, so apologies if it's anyway, the higher your current on that wire, the more loss you have due to resistance of the wire. So if I were to have done this differently and put 6 groups of 3, my voltage would have been way lower because it would have only been 3 cells together. But my current would have been way higher, and it would have caused the power loss in this cable to be about 3 times. Actually, I have it calculated, but it would have been significantly higher. So I would have lost more power between the roof and the solar controller.
So it's not so much if you want solar, it's how you and how you're going to use it. You do need to have some planning involved in regards to your roof structure, because on
Yes.
our coaches in particular, we have these roof risers, the side rails, if you will, that
Yep.
hide stuff up on the roof so you don't see the air conditioners per se. But that in itself causes a problem of shadowing, and
Yes.
that's the planning. And these roof risers, as you can see on the left and right side of that photo here, those roof risers, depending on where the sun is, will cast a shadow across a whole entire row of solar
Yep.
panels. And it's not just the roof risers. As the sun moves, it's the air conditioners or what have you.
Or
But
roof
it's
mount
mostly,
vents. Yeah.
yeah, anything. But in this particular case, any motor coach that has roof risers on the left and the right, because solar panels are usually close to the edges, that is a concern. And that
Yep.
it's a concern based on how you park mostly, because the sun's going to move across the sky. And depending on where you're parked, now if you're parked directly as the sun comes up from your windshield or from your tail end, it comes directly across your coach, then you're golden for the most part. But if it comes left to right whatsoever, you're going to get a shadow on a whole bank of those panels, and
Yep.
that's gonna change your efficiency. So planning is key when it comes to doing something this extreme.
Yeah, absolutely. We got some more questions here, a whole bunch of them actually. So let's see if we can get some of these taken care of. So on YouTube, David Walton asked, Michael, did you use any of the Tiffin supplied wiring or controller? No.
Oh God.
Well, yes and no. I did not use it for the house batteries. I did, as you saw up here, have this one panel that was installed by Tiffin, and it has this factory wiring that goes up to the roof cap here. And my solar controller for this panel is actually above the driver's seat in that overhead cabinet. What I did was, because for my personal transition, I also went to 24 volt lithium ion batteries, Tesla battery modules. We did a talk on that last week. You can watch the replay on David's channel. So this panel, number one, it was a different characteristic to the panels that I already had, and it was not going to be easy to incorporate from an electrical perspective to maintain efficiency of this panel versus the efficiency of the new panels. So I didn't want to put it in parallel or series with those. Secondarily, because I was going to a 24 volt system for my chassis batteries, or my house batteries, but my chassis battery to start the engine was still 12 volt, I needed to actually figure out a way to maintain the 12 volt starter battery separate from the house batteries. So what I ended up doing was I tied this panel and its charge controller to the battery that starts the engine. So now my starter battery is maintained by the solar panel, and it's always topped up. Everything's good. I can crank it up every morning. And then the rest of my panels maintain my house batteries. So, yeah, go ahead.
And to get right to the point of the Tiffin question is quite literally Tiffin's wiring is made for one panel. It's not heavy enough
Right.
gauge to do a full system. Actually, it's not heavy enough gauge. Period. They use a very low gauge cable
Yep.
that really is not efficient because of the amount of distance that they're running from the panel to the controller, from the controller, which is up in the cabinet, all the way down to the battery bank. And that controller should be as close as possible to the battery bank
Yes.
for the most efficiency. And the wire gauge, and especially when you're doing multiple panels, the wire gauge from the panels have to be sufficient because if the wire gauge is too low, you lose just too much current. You just lose a lot of the efficiency that the panel can actually produce will be lost just in the transfer if you don't have a
Yep.
heavy enough cable gauge.
Yeah, so back to what I was mentioning earlier about my selection of 6 in series and then 3 of those in parallel. Um, the You want to maintain the highest voltage you can to as close to your point of use as you can. So, like David was saying, if your charge controller is all the way up in the front of the coach and then your house batteries are 2/3 of the way back in the coach, you're converting the high voltage coming from the panels down to your battery voltage level really close to the panel and really far away from the battery. So now you're increasing the amperage on that line going to the battery and increasing your loss. So your efficiency of the panel itself is cut to maybe 60-75% of what it would have been if you'd moved that controller closer to your actual batteries. Which is why for mine, because again, I went crazy with lithium ion and everything, I put my solar charge controller right here, this PowerTrack Magnum box. That is the solar charge controller. And so this line coming in here, this was before I dressed everything up 100%. So it's not that messy right now. It's probably worse right now, actually. So this line coming down here through the breaker, that's coming right off the roof into the controller and then converted to my 24 volt nominal. That comes out through this line, through that disconnect switch, into my distribution system, and then down into my batteries. So the total lineage of loss on the 24 volt side is maybe 3 feet. of actual wire, and most of that wire is extremely heavy gauge, which reduces your losses as well. So anyway,
Yeah,
we
yeah. So the
we're
Tiffin wiring, no, don't count on the Tiffin wiring,
yeah, don't do that. And
or
for
any
most,
manufacturer's wiring
yeah,
for that probably matter.
most manufacturers are not going to put high quality wire in. The other thing too is the wiring I used is it's called welding cable, so it's an extremely fine strand and extremely high strand count. So that actually increases your conductivity and reduces your resistance as well, and it makes the cables really flexible and easy to work with. We're really terrible about answering all these questions. We got a whole bunch of them here, so let me
Okay,
move
so
forward here.
we go too. I guess I think we go a little too long on an answer
We
sometimes.
do, but I like to be thorough,
It's
right?
information is information.
Absolutely. So Keith Wheeler, how does a 100-watt panel some manufacturers default to put on at time of purchase,
Yeah.
then add on, say, a 300-watt panel? What problems do you run into, and how much better does it charge, and that type of thing? So I would
Panel.
personally,
Yeah.
yeah, I would personally
Go ahead.
not use the existing panel with the new panels unless they were all the same, and unless you
Yeah.
did the math to figure out the best way to combine those to get the efficiency out of them. I if I didn't have a
All
need,
cells are not created equal.
correct. If I didn't have a need for the 12-volt battery on the starter to be maintained, that panel would have been gone, and I would have put the new panels in its place. So it just worked out well for me to be able to reuse that existing installation for maintaining that starter battery. Let's see. Chris Fellows. Hey, Chris on Facebook says, would love to solar up my rig, but the cost versus benefit calculation doesn't work out for me. Hope you
That's
guys are
correct.
doing well.
That,
Yes. And
yeah,
that
that's
actually,
part of this conversation.
yes. And we can actually switch over to that just now if you would like. Let me get that view pulled up here. Okay. So, for my panels, I had to use the Renogy 100-watt panels so that they were small enough to be able to get a maximum number on the roof. So those panels, let's see here, $136 a piece when I bought them, and that's the shipped cost. But I needed 18 of them. So total in panels, I have $2,500 roughly in cost here to just the panels alone. Then I had to have a charge controller. So the charge controller, $875 from Magnum. Thankfully, I only needed one of those, so again, $875. Miscellaneous wiring, I just tallied all that together as $100. So your total installation cost for my solar, with me doing all the work, about almost $3,500 plus or minus. Now, for the actual cost or the benefit of it from generation side, let's first off say my per kilowatt hour cost for power that I pay for is only about 12 cents per kilowatt hour here in Las Vegas. Other places it's higher, so you can adjust this as you see fit. But in the whole 3 years that I've had this solar installation, my total production is only 4.7 megawatt hours. That sounds pretty impressive, but when you multiply it by 12 cents, that's only about $570 in earned money from the sun, basically. And now, keep in mind too that not all of this was power that I would have had to pay for to begin with. In many of the parks we frequent, power is included with your monthly fee. So I didn't actually necessarily earn all $570 because I wouldn't have had to pay for it to begin with. So my total savings, you can see I'm still quite in the red. I'm still $2,859 down on this installation.
Now, if you were using this to dry camp more, if you guys went out
Mm-hmm.
and dry camped, say once a month at least, something like that for a week or two, that probably would offset this quite a bit, I would imagine.
It would, but then there's the problem of our typical use scenario. Um, so for us, we are very heavy power users. Um,
Yeah, so are we. Yeah, thanks to you, so are we.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
actually, thanks to each other, I guess. We play off each other when it comes to this stuff.
we do. Yeah. So just to give you an idea of something that may take up some of that power in our coach here, this this is my media storage and my network gear in the coach, right? So
Oh, I love it. I love it.
yeah, the network gear surprisingly takes very little power. This server here takes up a lot of power.
This is a whole nother conversation,
It
but you
is.
gotta love Michael for doing it. Come on,
So
Michael. How big is that storage unit, Michael?
so I only have 12 drives populated, so it's not as big as it could be because I can put 36 in this chassis. But with 12 drives, I've got 198 terabytes of capacity.
Yeah, 198 terabytes of storage in his motor coach, and he's
Yeah,
only using 12 drives out of
36.
36. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. I was doing well with my 20 terabytes, but then Michael decided to put in a bigger server. So, any case, but yeah, needless to say, Michael and I, we are not an RV park owner's friend.
Right. And
If
yeah,
we're paying for electric or
and
not
I
paying for
actually,
electric.
yeah, I do offer. So RV parks, the first couple of times I go there, if they include electric with the monthly bill, I, so again, all my stuff's instrumented. I can tell exactly how much power
Yes.
I use, how much I produce,
Yep.
how much the car uses, all that stuff. So
Right.
if they have any questions, I offer straight up. I say, hey, look, I track all my power
Here's the
usage.
data.
I'm happy to pay your
Yep.
rate, to cover this power usage. Um, so yeah, it's yeah.
Uh,
I try to
well,
be
Bri
mindful.
moving on then to that craziness of power usage, Brian is asking, so all that solar on your car hauler, do you use that to charge the Tesla, or
I can.
and I, you can,
Yes.
but again, it's used. He's got he's got Tesla batteries inside the car hauler that provides power with an air conditioner, and he can run an air conditioner without
Yes.
power just off the batteries, and using solar alone. Um, but the coolest thing that I think that is when he can keep his car hauler with his motor coach, he literally can link them together
Hmm.
and create basically 8 cells of Tesla and all the additional solar that goes with it.
Yeah. So
And
the solar
basically
on
run
the
his coach like that.
yeah the solar on the car hauler is actually I have more capacity on the car hauler even though it's a smaller roof because I had fewer roof penetrations to move around, and I could put residential panels which are much more efficient than the smaller 100-watt Renogy panels. So I have 2,600 watts of solar on the roof of the car hauler, and then you can see here in this picture, I have two Magnum inverters. There's my Tesla batteries, uh, and
And,
so I can produce 50 amp split phase power out of this system, and I have a 50 amp receptacle on the front of the car hauler, so I can literally, as David said, plug the coach into the car hauler, and then operate with both of those systems combined.
yeah. So yeah, when I said earlier that Michael was a little extreme when it came to solar and his battery power stuff, now you can see what I mean.
Yep.
Um, so
Let,
this is why this is a great topic for Michael, because he's done so much research and actually done so much install. And I have to say that when the car hauler was done, I was with Michael at the time just for the solar panel portion, and it was cold,
it
but we did
was.
it. We got it done before the rain and the snow, but we were out there, Michael and I. Well, that's the earlier picture. Yeah, we were
Yep.
out there putting those suckers up. I think it was like 28 degrees at the time.
It was.
Um, but we but it got it done. We drilled
Yeah.
the holes, or for the wiring, we had to figure that out because the trailer was constructed a little weird, that we didn't expect it to be constructed like the way it was. But when
Yep.
Michael drilled his first hole, he's like, wait a minute, that doesn't go through. So
Yeah.
he had to figure it out. So yeah, unless you know exactly, you may run into issues when you're putting something in, that's for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah. With
And
RVs and car haulers and trailers of any kind, you have zero no knowledge of what you're going to run into, right? You
that's
could
right.
drill through
That's right.
something that's completely out of the way and hit a water line and be like, why does the water line run next to the roof?
It should be there.
Yeah. So, yeah, you never know. So we actually have a lot more questions. So let me see if I can get some of these in
Yep,
here.
I was just looking those up also.
Yep. So Dennis Reckless said, past experience with panels, finding replacements that are the same physical size is difficult because vendors change and designs change. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's where being able to unstick those, remove the adhesive off the bottom and off the coach, and then putting new adhesive on, and then the brackets thankfully are fairly universal for this type of panel,
Right,
so I can
right.
move that
Yep.
bracket onto the new panel and then restick it. I may have to move a bunch of other stuff
They're,
around because I
they're
packed it pretty
basically L
tight.
brackets.
Yeah.
They're basically L brackets.
Yeah. And the ones on the car hauler are completely different. I did drill through into the support beams in the roof of the car hauler because the car hauler had an aluminum roof, which in and of itself is fairly resilient, but it's only stuck down to the roof rafters. So that could lift
Yeah.
up, and I didn't want to put that type of force lifting up on the roof that's not really terribly well affixed.
Michael actually marked out where the rafters were. So when we were walking on the roof, because a car hauler is not made the same as a motor coach, we
Right.
actually had to make sure when we were stepping onto the rafters themselves, so we wouldn't step in the middle of of an aluminum
Yeah, in
ceiling
between
mount.
and yeah.
Yeah. We want to make sure we're protected because a car hauler is not built the same as a motor coach
Yep.
or an RV for that matter.
Yeah, it's pretty sturdy,
So
but yeah, I'd rather walk on those roof rafters.
yes,
And so we already talked about the question Brian had, the car hauler, do I charge the Tesla? I can. That's one of the benefits of having the two Magnum inverters and the split phase 240 volt power. So I can charge the X if I need to. I can run the coach off of it if I need to. I can
Yep.
run somebody else's coach if I needed to.
I've done that. I've done that
Yep.
when we were in Houston. I actually powered. Well, I didn't power it off of solar, mind you, but I did power because of our Tesla charging system. I was able to power another fifth wheel during the ice storm, and that was in Houston this past year.
Yep.
Any case, Kevin Latour is asking, are we going to touch more on whether investing in solar is worth the cost and what it is good for? Again, that comes down to a personal
Yeah.
decision.
So you saw my
It's
calculations.
yeah.
For me,
Hopefully.
yes.
If
For me
not, back up
personally,
the video.
for me personally, if I were to do all this again, I would do it on the car hauler because it's oftentimes isolated, and I want to be able to go out and work in the car hauler as if it were an office. And so
And you
having
might
the
not
solar,
have power from a plug.
correct. So having the solar and the batteries and the inverters allows me to run my air conditioner or a heater, my computers, my computer gear, anything I need out there, all the lighting, and not have to worry about, am I going to run out of power on this little dinky 12 volt deep cycle?
Right.
So we have another here from YouTube. Paul asks, "Do your panels move or tilt to follow the sun?" The ones on the car hauler, no, not at all. They're fixed permanently. The ones on the coach could, if I wanted to, but I don't.
They're not automated. They are
No,
not
they're definitely not
automated.
automated. But they do make lift kits or tilt kits for those brackets.
Don't give them any ideas.
No.
Please, for Loop's sake, don't give them any ideas.
Zero risk on that one.
I did that for Loop.
Yeah, no. So I will say, though, that my other solar install, because, I can't stop at just two. I have another solar installation here that runs something very cool, in my opinion, and that's my astronomy shed.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
you'll notice that these are tilted. And
Yes.
basically what I did was I looked at the solar angle over the full year, and then I determined what angle was best to get the most sun throughout the whole year. And then
Efficiency-wise.
yeah, efficiency-wise, because there is a huge efficiency gain, which is actually why that question came up in YouTube, by having your panels tilted toward the sun. They are the most
Yes.
efficient when the sunlight hits them perpendicular. So if you can achieve that, then you're going to get a lot more power out of them. So for my astronomy shed, where I don't have any other source of power, period, it is 100% disconnected from everything. I wanted to make sure that I had good power coming in all year round, basically.
And this is why if you go out to Quartzsite or any other places like that where a lot of people are dry camping, you'll see tilted solar panels up on the roofs
Yes.
because they're tilting it toward the sun, toward the horizon, just for that exact reason.
Yep.
Um, I shouldn't say horizon. They're tilting them
Toward
to the
the
best
sun angle.
angle toward the sun, and
Yep.
depending on which direction, and they'll actually park their motor coach
Mm-hmm.
in a certain orientation just to get the most use
Yeah.
because they are dry camping. There's nothing out there.
And a
So
lot of people
you'll see
too,
that.
yeah, a lot of people too that even have installations like this on their roof, they will still have freestanding panels, like residential panels that are bigger, like the ones that are at the observatory and the ones on the roof of the car hauler, and they will have
And put them
those
out.
out, propped up,
Yeah.
and they may move them at different angles throughout the day so that it follows the sun somewhat, and because that absolutely increases the efficiency a lot.
Yeah.
So we have we have several more questions from YouTube. Mr. Tommy 001. One big reason for having many solar panels would be to have charging capability, whether you had unobstructed sunshine or not. Correct? Yes. So, depending on how you wire your panels, you could have part or a portion of a single panel or multiple panels shaded and still be producing power on the unshaded panels. Again, it depends on how you have them wired. So whether they're series or parallel, if they're in series, then one panel, if that whole panel goes away, then it's going to drastically cut your power production. Actually, Gone with the Winds did a really good test video on this when they were moving onto their boat. They tested shading of each panel and like what it would actually take to drastically reduce the output. So that's a really good video to go watch for that exact topic. Let's see. Kevin Latour on YouTube asked, "Are you going to touch more on whether investing in solar is worth the cost?" And actually, I think that David, you had read that question earlier, so apologies. Yes,
I
we
did.
covered that. It depends entirely on how you use it and what you hope to get out of it. For people with small electrical needs, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, you like to boondock, then yeah,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense because you don't want to crank up a generator in the middle of a forest. That destroys the whole aesthetic of why you want to be out there. Of course, if you're in the middle of the
Yes.
forest, you may be heavily shaded. We won't get into that.
Let's face it, dry camping is dry camping. If you want a boondock or dry camp, then solar is for you, especially if you're going to do a lot of it. If you're
Yes.
not going to do a lot of it, okay, if you're going to be plugged in most of the time, like Brenda and I are, or Michael is for the most part. Michael did this, understand, in my opinion, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, and you will, I know you will, but you did this because you could do it and you
Yes.
wanted to do it. It wasn't a necessity. But
Correct.
let's face it, if the power was to go out in Las Vegas right now for an extended period of time, at least you'd have power during the day and evening time based on your solar consumption.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but, and that would probably finally drive up your cost of, to make it more positive versus your spreadsheet showing you currently at a negative loss.
Right. Yeah. And
So,
the other thing
in all
too.
reality,
Yeah. For me, like I said, if I were to redo this again, I would do it on the car hauler, but I would not do it on the coach just because of our
yeah.
use scenario. The lithium
Yeah. So,
batteries and the Magnum inverter and the ability to quickly recharge lithium from the generator and all that, that actually gives
yes.
us a significant improvement in our comfort level, whether we're stationary because we can offset, and actually, so because we have an EV and because we own the lot here in Las Vegas, we actually converted the electric usage here to be time of use. So we actually get billed much less during certain times of the day. So I can schedule the Magnum inverters to connect to shore power and recharge the batteries when power is cheap. And then when power goes crazy expensive, I can have them disconnect and then we run off the batteries until it goes cheap again. So,
Now, let's face it, most people won't have that choice.
correct.
So, it all, again, comes down, in my opinion, to, again, how much are you going to dry camp? Are you going to be able to recoup that cost? It's not cheap to do solar. It's
No.
really not. To do it
And
correctly, it's not cheap.
yeah, and that gets us into the next question from YouTube from Kevin Latour. He doesn't see the cost of the inverter or the batteries. Well, I did that separately from the solar. I did it all together, but it's a very good point. You can have all the solar you want, but you're not going to achieve anything unless you have a means of storing that produced power. Because a common misconception, the power doesn't flow directly from the solar panels into your coach's AC wiring and you're powering stuff off of it. That's not the way it works.
Right.
You oftentimes produce a surplus of power from solar, so you need a place to store that. And then when you're not producing solar, you need a place where it's been stored so that you can draw off of in high current needs, compared to like just a light or something that, yeah, you could technically plug a DC light into a solar panel and it will work while the sun's out. But
And in this
that's not
particular case,
exceptionally
Michael
useful.
is using Tesla batteries, which leads to Danny's question of the batteries themselves. His batteries that Michael is using are 420 amp hours each, and he's got four of them per
At 12
the
volt.
coach
Yeah.
at 12 volt. Excuse me, I'm sorry, at 12 volt, which is what most coaches run on. So that's why I use
Yep.
that number. 420 amp hours at 12 volt, and those he's got 4 packs, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
Michael, in your motor coach, and 4 packs in the car hauler itself.
Yep. And 2 packs in the Astronomy Shed, and a spare 4 packs I haven't installed yet.
Yeah, so basically, they are 24 volts because that's what Tesla cars and battery packs run on. But if you're using 12 volts, which is what the motor coach does, then he's at 420 amp hours per
per
pack.
per pack.
He's got
Yeah.
4 packs.
Yep.
So that answers that question for Danny there.
So let's see. We got another couple of questions here. Uh,
Linear
okay, so
accelerator.
YouTube, John Bloxham. Michael, can you go boondocking for weeks with your electrical setup? Stop staying at RV parks. Oh, it's a statement. You can go boondocking for weeks. Uh, yes,
I don't know.
we
Yes
would
and
not
no.
necessarily be as comfortable as we are when we're plugged in, just because we can't generate enough power in a single day to compensate for, let's say, the air
The use.
conditioners, yeah, that we use that day. If it's the right time of year, sure, yeah, we could. But until Starlink becomes accessible through the whole U.S., internet coverage is iffy in some of those spots, and amplifiers and
Good
antennas
point.
only get you so far. So yeah, once Starlink goes live, maybe,
Well,
we'll
this
see.
is where it all comes down to, again, what your use wants to be. What are you looking to
Yes.
get out of your motor coach or your RV? Because if you want to dry camp, if you want to get away from everybody, then solar could be an answer. But understand, it has to be done right. If it's not
Yeah.
done right, you're wasting money.
Yep.
And it's really easy to waste money by listening to other things online or what have you, um,
Yeah.
to put in products that just aren't going to be as efficient as they should be.
Yeah, there's a lot of incentive, and I'm not pointing fingers. I don't know what
No,
deals people have, but there's a lot of incentive to portray the positive aspects of solar,
of
or
solar.
lithium-ion batteries, or Magnum inverters, or Victron energy inverters, or whatever.
Yep.
That, name your brand. There are incentives for some YouTubers to provide the positive aspects of that. And only a few of those YouTubers will actually tell you the potential negative aspects, like
That's
the
right.
upfront cost for lithium-ion batteries. You need to maintain them temperature-wise, because once you go below freezing in the cells themselves, you do non-reversible destructive damage charging them. Uh, Maybe the cost to benefit ratio doesn't work out for what you want to achieve with it. If you're plugged in all the time and you have no desire to boondock, skip solar, right?
Yeah.
It's
Skip solar.
almost certainly not for you. Now, if
It
you
doesn't make
store your
sense.
coach in the wintertime and you winterize it, then 1 or 2 panels to maintain your batteries for parasitic loads, absolutely, that's great. But don't go crazy like I did and do the whole roof, and then the whole roof of your trailer, and then your astronomy shed.
Now, understand that what Michael just said about storing your coach, that only makes sense if your coach is not stored inside. If it's stored outside, as
Yeah,
it works. If it's stored inside, that's not going to make a
yeah,
difference anyways.
yeah. If you're
So,
stored inside,
uh,
you're probably going to be plugged in anyway, right? I
yeah,
mean, you're
you
probably going to have a
hope.
power source.
At least we would hope you would be. If not, make sure you use your battery disconnects and kill all voltage from the
Yep.
batteries whatsoever,
And make
just to
sure the
protect the
batteries,
batteries.
if you have flooded lead
Fully,
acids, make sure the batteries are topped up before, water wise, before you store them. Make sure they're fully
yeah.
charged, so if it gets cold, they don't freeze. All these things. There's a whole bunch of
I,
a secondary side
e-
of things that you have to consider there.
Even on our motor coach, when we had this coach built, I had a second solar panel put on by Tiffin. I also had upgraded wiring put in because I said, guys, you're using the wrong gauge wiring.
Yep.
I want you to use 10 gauge wiring for the solar panels, and they did. Um, and I had a second solar panel. So I got two 180 watt solar panels up there. I don't use them. I really
Yeah.
don't use them. And it was even adding one solar panel on top of what the one they give you. Okay, I added one. To me, it was a waste of money. It
Yeah.
makes no sense that we did that. And I to this day I kick myself saying, why did I do that? Not that it was a lot of money, but still, it was still money, and it made no sense because of how we used the motor coach.
Yep.
And we don't. It didn't. I don't know why I thought one extra solar panel would make a difference, but it doesn't make any
It's
difference.
it's easy to become enamored with the thought of free power from
It
the
is.
sun, right? Um,
Yes,
and that's the
yes.
thing. It's very attractive when you hear what you could do with it, but once you tamper that with reality of how much power actually gets generated, even on a good day, that 1800 watts that I have on the roof, it only produces 1800 watts during a certain time of year, summertime, when the sun is high in the sky, when I'm not parked under anything, and for only, say, 30 minutes to an hour and a half total, will it actually produce a full 1800 watts. Outside of that time, it could be drastically less, drastically less. And I'll bring up a graph here in a minute and show that. But let's get through some more questions here. From YouTube, Denny Ramsey asks, are those 250 amp hour 24 volt Tesla batteries? They are. I purchased them from an eBay seller that I highly recommend. He does a lot of good work. He tests the cells. He only sources them from cars he's purchased and he's parted out, so he knows the history of the car and where it's going to and all that. It's called Tesla Motive. No, Cali
Michael, if you
Motive.
care to add a
Yeah.
link to him, I wouldn't have any objection to that. Feel
Okay.
free.
Yeah, I'll throw that in the comments after the video. After our stream ends, I'll look that up for you.
Okay,
Um,
no problem.
Yeah. So, yeah, Cali Motive, very, very good reseller of Tesla parts and Tesla battery modules. Let's see. Brian from YouTube, Brian Nawa? Sorry, I hope I don't
Yeah,
mess that up
why
too bad.
Magnum instead of
Well,
Victron?
actually, there's one ahead of that he asked. Surprised I did not
Oh,
add an Arduino and a linear actuator to solar track the panels on the Astronomy Shed. Well, so I already have an Arduino rolling the roof off, and I have another Arduino with a linear actuator lowering the flap on the south wall so that I can get a good view of the southern sky. I just the benefit of the extra complexity for the solar panels, it wouldn't have made that much difference, and it would have been something extra that could have failed while I wasn't there, and the whole point of a remote observatory is to operate it while you're remote. So I've only had to race down and fix something once, and that was my own personal screw up. That's a different video though.
it's a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kevin Latour said, would it be possible or practical to be able to charge the batteries for multiple sources, solar, plug-in, diesel engine, and regen braking?
Oh yes.
Absolutely, yes. Matter of fact, when we're driving, um, when the batteries are depleted and the generator kicks in, we're charging from both the generator and the solar at the same time. When we're plugged into shore power, we're charging from solar and shore power at the same time. The diesel engine, I could put on a special 24 volt alternator on the diesel engine and charge from that directly as well if I wanted to. It just doesn't make sense cost-wise because of how we operate and how little
Right.
that would actually get used. But yes, you can absolutely charge from multiple sources in parallel. That's what happens every day for ourselves.
Basically, what it comes down to me, if you're going to spend money on your motor coach for power, okay, and we're talking electrical power, not shore power, okay, so electrical,
Yep.
solar, lithium battery, or batteries in general. If you're going to spend money, and this is in my humble opinion, okay, all of this is in our opinion, mine or Michael's, I would imagine. If you're going to spend money on your motor coach, and if you're considering solar or lithium or both or whatever, put your money into lithium first,
Yes.
because in my opinion, you put the money in the lithium batteries and then you can charge it off the generator very quickly, recharge it, and using very little diesel fuel in a timely manner versus using the cost and the installation cost of a solar panel, especially if you don't do it yourself.
Yep.
The solar panels are one cost, the charge controller is another cost, the installation, the labor, if you don't do it yourself, is another cost. So all of that offset, in my opinion, I would just put my money into lithium batteries and just
Yep.
run off the generator to recharge those, because your cycle rate, I mean, is going to be greatly reduced, first of all, in regards to your recharge rate. But the cost efficiency and the cost use of that money, dollar for dollar, over solar, just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense unless you're using it all the time, and most people are not.
Yep.
That's my
So
opinion.
yeah, I mentioned the graph earlier. So um, I collect all the data I can, right? So this graph shows the power production of the solar panels day by day by day by day over the past year. And you can see here in October through November, we were parked in an area where we didn't have any sun coming in. And then once we moved to where we could get some sun, even then it was low on the horizon. It had occasional shadows, so it wasn't producing very much power, even though I have all these on the roof. Starting in January, we moved again and we got a little bit more sun throughout the day, but you can still see it's not really making a lot of power because it's the wintertime here in the northern hemisphere. For it, that means the sun is low on the horizon, so it's not hitting the panels very efficiently, and there's a lot of shadows cast. Even though my panels are up higher on my roof, there's still other things that are higher than them that are casting long shadows. But you get here in the summertime, and then you start making some power, right? And if I zoom into this area, you can see, like here, I was up in the 1700 watts that day. So that was in June. We were in June. We were in Montana. So even at northern latitudes, Montana, sun wasn't as directly overhead, but we were still getting good power during that time frame. So you can definitely tell over the course of the year, because of the solar angle, because of where you're parked, you're going to have a lot different in production of your power. So don't.
Understand, this is coming from a person who has a lot of solar panels on his roof, not
Yes.
just 3 or 4, but the entire roof.
Yep.
So to produce that much power, it takes a lot of solar panels and thus a lot of cost.
Yep.
So, if
Um,
you're thinking about adding 3 or 4 solar panels, that might be one thing, but the charts you're seeing from Michael and the wattage produced, that's with a total entire 45-foot motor coach roof.
yeah.
Every area that he could possibly put a solar panel has a
Yep.
panel.
Yeah.
So,
Here's another way to look at it too. The steeper the slope of this line, the more power was produced that day, and then as it levels off, you see less power was produced. And again, this is a year. We could go even wider and see more. So that's when I first installed, and again, you can tell throughout the year in the wintertime you slope off and you don't produce nearly as much.
and that's when most people are traveling and going to the warmer climates and the deserts and things like that, is during the wintertime
Yep.
anyways.
So we have another couple of questions here. Brian from YouTube and Mr. Tommy001 from YouTube combined asked, why Magnum instead of Victron or Morningstar? So a couple of reasons. Number one, Victron didn't have anything when I was doing the research that could actually meet my specific requirements, between the hybrid use and being able to parallel multiple inverters to get higher power output, and there were a couple of other things. It just, Victron wouldn't have worked for this specific use case. It may have worked better for my car hauler, but I have such experience with Magnum. I actually have I've tapped into their communications line so that I can extract all this data out of the Magnums. So I'm very familiar with what they can do, what their shortcomings are, how to work around them. Moving to something different for the car hauler, it wouldn't have made sense. And actually for Morningstar, I do have a Morningstar solar controller at the Astronomy Shed because it made sense there. I didn't have to worry about inverting power and producing AC. Everything in the shed runs off of DC. So that was, yeah.
A
So I did
no-brainer.
do Morningstar there. Yep.
Yeah. So I think, unless you have because I know you're feeding this to your Facebook group. Also, we are not. So unless you have anything that shows up on Facebook, I don't see anything other
Yeah,
than
we've
that
had
we
a
have
couple of
touched upon.
questions. Yeah,
Okay.
we've had a couple of questions from Facebook, so we thank our Facebook viewers. This is our first Facebook live stream. And just, sorry, to Mr. Tommy001, here you can see that's our Morningstar solar controller there. That's charging my 2 Tesla battery modules. That's inside the solar shed.
So with that said, I think the questions that the hard questions come up to basically being, is solar worth it to you? Is it something that you need to do the expense on? And in my humble opinion, for most people, it's really not. It's not going to give you the cost benefits,
Right.
as Michael has shown of his install, and he's got an extreme install, and did the labor himself and what have you. He still to this day, over how long has it been?
3 years.
3 years, has not recouped the cost in electric at
Yep.
this point. So, as you can see right there, he's still at this point down almost $3,000 in the costs.
Yeah.
That could have bought a lot of diesel fuel in order to recharge lithium batteries in a short time. So
Yeah.
that's why I advocate, if you're going to do something, you're going to put the money somewhere, you put it into getting rid of your regular deep cycle batteries and you put them into lithium ion batteries.
Yes.
And the biggest important thing there, based on our last conversation last week, is the battery management system, and to make
Mm-hmm.
sure it has a really good battery management system built into it. So
Yep.
watch that video on lithium ion if you decide to change out batteries. And that's I know I'll be doing that at some point. I won't be adding solar to my motor coach.
I'm going to
Obviously,
go
you
out
know
on
where
a
I
limb
stand
and
on that.
yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess your lithium transition is going to happen this summer.
It will. It will. It's gonna happen this summer. I need batteries. Period. I mean, I'm wondering right now how I'm gonna make it back to New York because my deep cycle AGMs are so beat at this point. Staying overnight, I have to shut off the refrigerator, everything, just to conserve enough power. But
Yeah.
any case, we
A,
will
a
be doing something
couple
this
of real
summer.
quick last questions. Sorry.
Sure.
Red
Go ahead.
Jaguar 100 Travels says, Michael, have you had any problems with your roof having that many panels installed? No, not at all. Um, and actually, that brings me back to something I meant to mention earlier.
It makes it harder to walk on the roof.
It does. It makes it harder to clean the roof, for sure. But the reason I'm able to get away with only the adhesive, if my roof were just a flat roof with no roof cap on the front and no side rails, I would not have done just the adhesive. I would have absolutely
Right.
screwed through into the substrate. But because I have that roof cap that comes up and it actually sits up above even the top of the solar panels, so that's deflecting air as I'm driving over the top of the panels instead of down underneath them, creating currents and
And
potentially
creating
whatever
basically a
uplift.
wing and pressure lift.
Yes. So that is a huge protection, which is actually why on the car hauler another reason why I did not just use straight adhesive, right? I screwed in, actually, I used what are called riv nuts, which are rivets that actually have threading inside so that I could bolt directly into them. And the car hauler is aluminum, so I had to use stainless steel riv nuts and bolts and everything to keep the galvanic. It's a whole different discussion. But anyway,
It's a whole different. Yeah.
yeah, so they are anchored extremely well to the roof of the car hauler, just in case I'm towing it behind the Tesla or something and I don't have the protection of the coach to keep the wind off of that.
Right.
And let's see, what do I store in 200 terabytes? A lot of 4K high dynamic range content, and a lot of it. Anyway, what is your opinion of the newer coming solid state batteries? Would there be an advantage using those in a solar system? Faster charging, lighter weight, smaller units. So if any of those technologies pan out and actually make it to market, certainly the lower weight and higher power density would be beneficial. Using solar, there's the limit on your charge capacity or your charge rate is your solar panels to begin with. So having faster charge rate capability batteries would not help in a solar installation, but it certainly would help, charging off your generator or something like that, as long as your inverter charger system is capable of dumping more power into them. And then last question, I think David's wanting to wrap up. So last question: do you have issues charging your batteries in cold temps, or do you just drive in warmer temps? So Paul, and that came from Paul on YouTube. The
I froze.
oh, there you go. Okay. Um, so the for my battery install, I actually have a coolant loop or fluid loop that runs through the batteries themselves. That's part of the Tesla module design. Um, so I it wasn't in the picture, but let me see if I can find one that has that in there.
I
Sorry.
understand that Tesla. Well, Michael is looking for that. Tesla, as he mentioned, has a liquid loop that runs through it. Some battery manufacturers, like Battleborn and what was that other one? Battleborn, for example, they have heaters that you can buy batteries that have
Yeah.
heaters built in. Understand, there's two different ways you can heat the batteries. They're heated the same way internally, but the difference being is one, you can heat the batteries from the battery power itself before you turn the charger on, or two, you can heat the batteries from the charger before the battery management system starts to charge the batteries.
Yep.
And the latter is the better way of doing it. So if you're looking for batteries, and you're going to be in more colder weather, 32 degrees or less, so 0 degrees Celsius or less, you want to make sure that your batteries, your lithium batteries you're buying, do have a built-in heater, and I would highly recommend that they be charged off the charging circuit versus the battery circuit.
Yes.
So therefore, they're being charged by the charger themselves, warming up the battery before switching over to actually charging the batteries, versus taking the voltage from the batteries to raise the temperature before turning on the charging circuit. The reason for that is because, you could be in a situation where you ran your batteries too low, the heaters, it's too cold out, the heaters turn on and actually draws the battery down even more, and you can't start your generator.
Yeah. Or
Then
you
what are you
can't,
going to do?
or it's too low in the BMS or your charger device, your inverter, for example,
Yeah,
won't actually give voltage to the batteries because it thinks there's a problem with the batteries themselves, which there kind of is. They're really
yeah.
low.
Yeah, they're really low. So yeah, be a heads up on that. So in regards to solar is one thing, but lithium batteries is a totally different subject, which we talked about last week, and we made a correction on that. Make sure you read our description in regards to one of the corrections on the particular coach that I have.
Yep.
Um, but in any case, other than
Yeah.
that, you got any other questions, Michael, that we can finish up, because we got over an hour here.
Yep. So just real quick, this is the fluid loop. This is it's a fluid sump. Let me move so you can see the mouse cursor. There we go. So this is the fluid sump. There's a heater built or down into this tank. There's a pump that circulates the fluid through the modules. This is a radiator with a fan on it. This was actually summertime, so the fan was on instead of the heater, so that it blows through that radiator and keeps the batteries cooler as well. So that's how I maintain my battery temperature, so that I can charge summer or winter or whatever, it doesn't matter. But like David said, there's alternatives
For the
for
most
drop-in
part, yeah.
replacements. Yeah. So
Yeah,
um,
Tesla's batteries are extreme. Don't to
yeah.
do them in your motor coach, it's extreme. There's more involved, that's for sure.
Yep.
But if you're going to be looking to do lithium instead of solar, or either or, make sure you get batteries that are properly chargeable. And the most important thing is you really need batteries that have a heater in them, of some
If you're going
sort.
to be, if there's any risk at
In
all in extended periods in cold climate, because again,
Hey, come
keep in
on,
mind,
Michael.
yeah,
I'm hearing. I was down in Houston, Texas, and it
yeah,
got to in the teens and single digits for a week,
yeah,
and I would not have been. And we were out of power, so I
yeah,
wouldn't have been able to charge my batteries unless I have heaters. You just don't know with today's climate what's going to
that is
happen.
true. Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, and also keep in mind, if it's only overnight gets down to the 20s, but the daytime is in the 40s or 50s, your cells themselves are not likely to hit 32 degrees inside. So
That quickly,
that
yes.
quickly, yeah. So you want to weigh the benefits and the risks and get
Yep.
what's going to work for you.
Yeah, the outside temperature doesn't mean the inside temperature of the battery. That's for sure. Just
Yep.
like anything else. So the outside temperature, you can shut off everything in your motor coach power wise, so there's no heat or anything, and you're going to still maintain some heat inside the motor coach for X period of time, no matter what the outside temperature is. Same
Yep.
holds true for the inside of the battery.
Yep. So
So you got to offset that.
I
So in
think
any case, we hope
yeah.
this has been valuable information, especially from Michael and his install and his expertise when it comes to solar and charging systems for your motor coach and or car hauler. Um, so we hope this information has been useful to you and that you like our little tech talks here. If you do, please give us a thumbs up. Click the little thumbs up. It helps our rankings in YouTube. And please, if you're not a subscriber and you just happen to come across this feed, please click subscribe on my channel or on Michael's channel, turtleherding.com. And
Yep.
that'd be greatly appreciated. Other than that, I'm David Bott from OutsideOurBubble.com.
And I'm Michael Kidd from turtleherding.com. And we'll see you down the road.
And, and
Oh.
together we're OutsideOurTurtleHerdingBubble.com.
Yeah,
Right?
that domain still
Something like
exists.
that.
So does Turtle
Yeah.
Bubbles. We get into all sorts of
Turtle
internet
bubbles.
mischief.
Turtle bubbles. That's
Yeah.
it. Guys,
All
thank
right.
you very much for joining us today. Take care. Keep safe. We'll see you on the
Yep.
road.
Catch you later. Bye bye.